Assalamu alaikum everyone, I hope you're doing well inshallah. So today's video is going to be touching on some of the recent skirmishes that have been happening between India, Bharat, as it's also known, and Pakistan. So there was recently a skirmish between both countries where it involved fighter jets, J-10C and Rafales, I think I was saying that right, fighter jets engaging in dogfights at the border. There's also been missiles and ballistic missiles being launched across the border, reports of drones and video footage of drones as well striking across the border. And thankfully there's been a ceasefire that has been agreed. There was some issues with the upholding of the ceasefire, but it does look like the ceasefire has managed to hold out up until the date of this video. Alhamdulillah, because with such wars, with such populations, both nuclear armed countries, it can be very devastating for the entire planet really, if both countries exercise the use of their full capacities, and it can literally result in a nuclear winter. But of course, it's in the best benefit for the populations of both countries. And I thought I'd make this video. There's been a lot. I recently made an X account, and I've been observing online a lot of animosity between both populations. So between Indians and Pakistanis, making memes of one another, attacking one another in a way that, you know, it's not verbally, which can have massive effects on the psyche of both communities. And there's been an element of radicalization in both communities since these skirmishes. And I'd like to say I am a child of the subcontinent. I consider myself, my family are of Pakistani background. I'm Pakistani background, and I also consider myself a child of Bharat, because these countries, we are all one people. As much as, but if you're potentially raised in some of these countries, in Pakistan or Bharat, and the way you're taught in your school curriculum, the way your community teaches you to consider yourself, it builds an identity in the modern day where you consider yourself it encourages this. I'm not saying everyone has this identity there, but it builds an identity for the people of that nation, in which part of their identity is to not be the other, the enemy often. And this is unfortunately the way both nations are building their populations. But for someone who is born outside of that region and I was born in an area where, in a very Indian dominated area, so the majority of people around me were not, there was a big Muslim contingent where I grew up, but the majority of people around me were Hindus and Sikhs from the subcontinent, often first generation when I was in school. And this was a time before the rise of right-wing Hindu nationalism, but we were growing up, we were friends, we would eat the same food, we wear the same outfits, we talk the same languages. So we're brothers and sisters in humanity, and we are the same people, both Pakistanis and Indians, and people from Bharat. So, like, unfortunately, and it has been like that throughout history. So, you know, if you go back to the Delhi Sultanate, the Mughal Empire, the various kingdoms that existed prior and since, both communities can even claim to be descendants of the Indus Valley civilization, which was an ancient civilization, one of the first civilizations of humanity on that level of scale, where, you know, alongside ancient Egypt and the Sumerians. So like a really ancient civilization where irrigation existed to a level which wouldn't exist for thousands of years. So both people, we are the same people, and we need to see that, and we need more voices raising this fact, basically. And I'm glad there's been a ceasefire, but what needs to happen now is both countries to both countries, the rest of the world laughs basically when both countries fight each other. It's not how both of these countries think they're being perceived. And what needs to happen now is both countries need to look at the rest of the world. The world is moving in a more globalized direction. Even from me being a Muslim, the world, Muslim countries are uniting on that aspect, on the common denominator that is Islam. You have the European Union, which is uniting on a shared cultures and values. You have the equivalent in the North American, in North America. You have, I know with Trump there's been an element of nationalism and of closeness increasing in the world, and it's kind of semi-tribalism happening, but in general the world is moving towards a more globalized world, and you can see that with the recent elections, with the UK, the Labour Party coming into power, with the Australian Labour Party, I believe, that's also come into power. So the world is in Canada with Mark Carney, who was the Bank of England governor, who's the governor of Bank of England, and he's come into power over his opponent Pierre, who was a right-wing politician who was almost, often people were saying he was destined to become Prime Minister of Canada. So these things, we're working towards a more globalized world, and the subcontinent really needs to pick up and follow up on this. And one thing that can be done is both countries, look, what happened in Pahalgam was awful, and it is totally unacceptable for such acts to be carried out. But what is also happening in Balochistan is also terrible, and the targeting of railway stations and bombings, that is also awful and needs to be called out. And what needs to happen is both countries need to come together. Both countries, if India, for example, if Bharat is claiming that Pakistan has done something, then produce your evidences for it. And Pakistan and Bharat should sit together, have these conversations, these difficult conversations. There's no point throwing missiles and drones from across the border like children. They should be sitting together, talking to one another, airing out their differences, they should be working together against terrorists, sitting down, because neither nation is completely innocent of these things throughout history. So they need to sit down, have these conversations, stop using threats of like environmental terrorism, like the closing down of the Indus River, which is not possible, by the way, but just the threat of that, and working instead of Bharat having a long-term goal of closing the Indus River, which is going to cause the extinction. Bharat prides itself on its upholding its environmental policies and upholding the environment, and it has done a good job, such as in the Sundarbans, and with the various tiger reserves it has, the preservation of the Asiatic cheetah that they're now doing. These are excellent, and the work they're also doing not just in these big megafauna, but also with the mugger crocodile and the gharial. They really do have a good track record of preserving nature, and they're well known for that, and it's something that they should be happy with what they have done. But now they're going to just, through pettiness, close the Indus River and extinct who knows how many endemic species to the Indus River. We have the Indus River dolphin, we have mugger crocodiles in that area as well. So all of these creatures are going to be affected through the closing of the river, and that's going to cascade. It's not just about the environment impacts humans as well. That's going to cascade, cause suffering of millions and millions of people, of their own people that just live in another country. And Other communities have done this to the subcontinent, and we never hear the end of it. So with the country I live in now, the Prime Minister Winston Churchill, he was responsible for the Bengal famine, which killed, I think, over 4 million people in Bengal, and that was atrocious. And that was during World War II. He redirected supplies from that area and facilities from that area in order to help with the war effort, leading to the death of that many people in Bengal. And we all, India and Pakistan, can come out and say that that was war, that was genocide, or that was a crime against humanity. So why are Bharat looking to do that towards Pakistan now? And likewise, in Pakistan, I don't know the situation. We need to see the evidences for what Bharat is saying about the Pahalgam terror attack. Pakistan, there's been no evidence provided so far, as of yet. But regardless, Pakistan does need to get a grip of itself, and it does need to control what's happening within its borders. People don't feel like, slowly it is happening. I do believe it is happening, but look what happened last time with the Sri Lankan cricket team came over to visit. And Pakistan has changed since then, I do agree, but it's not fully there, and Pakistan does need to help, strengthen itself in this area of having a grip of what's happening within its borders. And what better way to do that than to work with the most populated country in the world right next to you? But sadly, the way things are, both countries, both politicians of both countries, they rile up the crowd and use the other country and use the outsider as a way of winning elections and of keeping power in the case of, say, the Pakistani military. Look at what happened to Imran, and look at what happened to Imran Khan. He was trying to raise Pakistan away from being a militarized state, and he was captured. And the thing Imran Khan was doing, which unfortunately we're seeing the loss of that direction, that pathway today, was Pakistan is a very Punjabi dominated. I'm Punjabi, but it is very Punjabi centric and very Punjabi dominated, especially in the military elements, and at the expense of other regions like Balochistan and stuff. So on a lot of these regions, they do have their like real concerns and justified worries, but this doesn't mean you should delve into tribalism and start trying to build your own nation state. Pakistan, the idea was to have a state built on something greater, and the same for India as well. It wasn't, both countries were not founded as, like, for example, I'm thinking of a country, I can't really think of a country right now, like Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan, like, these countries that are founded for a certain tribe and for a certain ethnic group. Armenia or these kind of countries founded for a certain ethnic group. These countries were not founded for that. They were founded for a greater ideal. Pakistan being a land for the Muslims, and India being a land that holds many different tribes and nations together in a way. So, they should really remember that. And I understand the suffering that's going on in the often neglected regions in both these countries, but they need to remember that they shouldn't evolve back to tribalism and trying to make a country for their own people. They should try and work towards that globalist route that everyone else is working towards, that the world is progressing towards, that progress is happening towards. it's also very clear to me that India is working on a policy of balkanization of Pakistan. So basically the breakup of Pakistan into Punjab, absorption of Kashmir, and then the Khyber province being transferred to Afghanistan, and then Balochistan becoming a separate nation, and Sindh as well. And this is because of their refusal to understand the greater idea of Pakistan is working towards. And yeah, all this is going to do, it's not going to lead to Akhand Bharat like they believe. It's just going to cause more and more problems and divisions. And India was at its strongest when it had a unifying empire for India, from the time of, say, Ashoka to the Mughal emperors to the Delhi Sultanate. When there was a unifying power for all of India, that's when it was at its strongest. So breaking India down never achieves anything to that level of strength. And yeah, that way of approaching things and that way of thinking is basically, our way of achieving Akhand Bharat is the only way. And that's what their strategy is in the long term. So they want to balkanize Pakistan, play the long game over centuries, and then slowly absorb those various states into a greater India, and then on their way to Akhand Bharat. And this, for me, look, everyone wants a greater India in their heart of hearts. But in the long run, we're talking about civilizational scales. Everyone wants a unified India. I don't like to use everyone wants Bharat, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the whole subcontinent region. Everyone wants it to be unified. It's just a matter of everyone has their own ideas of how it should be unified. Instead of like imposing your ideas, you should just, not affect the current dynamic as it is today. Both countries should not be affecting each other to the level that they are today, and just let it play out. Because the way that they're trying to affect it today is causing to the suffering of the Kashmiri people, is leading to the suffering of the Balochi people, is leading to the suffering of the Punjabi, the Rajasthani people, everyone on that fault line, which is the border that exists today, is leading to the suffering of those people. So they should just kind of, this is my humble opinion as a child of this region, they should leave it as it is and work towards a more globalized world, and whichever ideology wins out in the end in terms of how to govern that region, then let it happen. Is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that matter. I also wanted to say, feel free to share your thoughts. Sorry it's been a bit rambly, but it was really off the cuff, and I wanted to kind of air some of my thoughts on Bharat and Pakistan, and just kind of have an informal conversation with you guys. Happy to explore different areas of this further in more solid, concrete, structured form, and give a bit more facts on these areas. But I just wanted to give my initial thoughts on this. I'm also, inshallah, I'm looking to go to India in the next few months, and I'm probably going to be the only Pakistani. I'm British, but I'll be the only one of Pakistani descent. I'm first generation, so I'll be the only one of Pakistani descent probably in that region, which is going to be interesting. So keep me in your du'as. And I mean, I'm an Indophile. Is that a thing you can say? But I love the culture of the subcontinent, and let's start raising these voices about, not the voices that we're hearing right now of like the right-wing Hindu nationalism, calling Muslims invaders, even though Muslims have been on the subcontinent since pretty much the inception of Islam, and not the voices in the Pakistan military, which, we all know there's high degrees of corruption in the Pakistani military. If you live in London, you can see with the governing parties of Pakistan, you can see the corruption, the levels of corruption here today, the Sharif family and what they own in the most expensive parts of London. So let's not pipe up the voices of these two sub-communities in the subcontinent. Let's pipe up the voices of the real people of the subcontinent and pipe up the voices of how we are brothers and sisters in humanity, how we should move past the hatred that's been sown since, that has really escalated since the British Empire. But we should really, it's not a matter of blaming Britain, it's a matter of looking within and building for a better, more globalized world. So that's all I've got to say on the matter. Thanks for listening to this ramble, and Assalamu alaikum.